When we learn about the history of all socialist and communist regimes, we really are only taught that they are dictatorships with very bad people in charge that have too much power, and there's deaths, there's starvation. We aren't taught what got them there. The same promises we're hearing in America were promised back to the Cubans in the early ages and in every other leftist regime coming to power.
Socialismo o muerte. Cuba!
These brutal, totalitarian, genocidal regimes, basically, that emerge from the system over and over and over again.
Because you're handing over full economic and financial power to one entity, the government. And when you have that, you are the sole provider of all resources and goods and services. And what happens then? You can say, you better behave or act this way, or we will not give you XYZ services and resources. That is why it's so bad.
There's growing unrest around the world against communist totalitarianism. This is seen right now in the growing social discontent in China, and recently in the anti-communist protests in Cuba. To learn more about this and how this wave of change might affect us here in the United States, we sat down with Morgan Zegers of Young Americans Against Socialism.
Morgan, real pleasure having you on Crossroads again.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
So let's talk about kind of the significance of this whole Cuba protest against communism, because we've seen communist regimes kind of causing trouble quite a bit lately, China being the biggest example of this probably. And sometimes we don't think about how this really affects us or what it means for us. What's your take on what's happening in Cuba right now?
Yeah, for me, we're seeing a lot happen in America, right? We're seeing those early rumblings of a rise of a leftist regime, is what I would say. There's a checklist in history of what really happens in a country, the totalitarianism that rises, the authoritarianism, and of course, the economic step, which is socialism. And we're seeing those early stages in America. What I've noticed in the American classroom is that when we learn about the history of Cuba, when we learn about the history of all socialist and communist regimes, we really are only taught that they are dictatorships with very bad people in charge that have too much power, and there's deaths, there's starvation. We aren't taught what got them there. And so our inability to connect the dots of the same promises we're hearing in America were promised back to the Cubans in the early ages and in every other leftist regime coming to power, we don't have those red flags going off in our head when we hear those promises. And I think that's leading to what we're facing now with 70% of young Americans being willing to vote for a socialist. And so now when we see what's happening in China and Cuba right now, it's important for us to try and connect those dots. And so that's my mission lately, instead of just taking the cheap talking point of socialism is bad, look at Cuba, look what's happening in Cuba. I don't want to go on that. I want to go deeper and see how we can make positive change in America based on those situations.
That's an important part of this discussion, because it's true. I mean, I talk to young people. I'm kind of young still. I guess. I don't know. I'm kind of young, I guess. I don't know. And I talk to young people about this, and they really believe that communism is a bad idea. A lot of them. But they believe that, and I mean, kind of, right? Kind of.
I'm getting a little weird there.
Yeah. But they tend to believe that it was just carried out wrong, and they tend to believe that the system would be different if we were to try it again, because that guy just got too into his own power, and he did things that we would never do, and we won't be like that. And that's how they rationalize these brutal, totalitarian, genocidal regimes, basically, that emerge from the system over and over and over again. And they justify it like that. But you're making a good point, that understanding how these things came about, that actually the intentions and the stated intentions each time are actually almost the same.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an important part of this discussion.
Yeah, and what goes along with that is the very manipulative and distorted narrative. We talk all the time about socialism's never worked before. I'm sure you've heard it a million times, even at this conference. We say socialism's been tried 24 times, and we're still hearing people want to try it again. What we need to really connect the dots for in young Americans' minds is why it doesn't work. And so when you hear leftists say that we need socialism, they say because the people deserve the power. The people will have the power under socialism. Right now it's corporations and businessmen and all these things. But at the end of the day, that's a lie. People have power under capitalism when we're able to have economic and financial power. That's all it is. Capitalism, AOC will say it's people desiring profit over anything else. That's how she's described it before. No, it's not at all. That's a huge lie. It is people literally just being able to participate in the economy and have businesses, whether it's small or large. Maybe it grows. I mean, I have a small business. I would love for it to grow one day. I mean, that takes a lot of work to achieve that. But it's also just private property, being able to buy and sell goods. Very, very low level, like on the level of the people, not these high up corporations. We need to think of capitalism like that, individual economic freedom. And when you give the government full control of the economy, what happens is a shift in who has full control of other things as well. And so socialism is bad because you're handing over full economic and financial power to one entity, the government. And when you have that, you are the sole provider of all resources and goods and services. And what happens then? You can say, you better behave or act this way, or we will not give you XYZ services and resources. That is why it's so bad, because you are now at the will of whatever that person with that power asks you to do. This is my theory, though, and I want to get your take on this. I'm thinking with what's going on in America, we have these corporations uniting with the Biden administration, getting this woke policy saying we're not going to provide our services, we're not going to let you do these things unless you agree with us. And many times they are very large, almost monopolistic. We're almost skipping the step of socialism, of seizing the means of production, because these massive corporations already have serious economic and financial control over us, and they are working with the regime, the government, to get desired action and behavior from us. And so I think it's really an unprecedented experience in America. And I love watching it play out as a history nerd, but I'm also disturbed watching it at the same time.
Well, this is the way I perceive it. I think we're dealing with a unique form of socialism that's fitted for the American system. And I don't know how young socialists don't put it through their heads that, we oppose the millionaires and the billionaires and the big corporations, but the millionaires and the billionaires and the big corporations are the ones like backing their movements. Where's the logical connection to this? I mean,
yeah. Well, and for me, they always want to be like the hippies, the rebellious kind of people. Young people have that rebellious spirit, and I'm always looking at like how to rebrand being rebellious in terms of it's being conservative. It's being able to say, I want to live on my own. I want to take care of myself. I want to be self-reliant. And so I always think of the movie Red Dawn. It's these like beautiful high school teenagers that are literally fighting the communists together, the Wolverines, which was their mascot of their school. And it was hot back then. I mean, Patrick Swayze was in a movie where they kill communists that are infiltrating America, and these teenagers band together. And so I try and think of how we could have more fun with it. And I do feel that movement growing. People are paying attention. They're on our side. And this concept of counterculture is so hot right now. And I want to keep that going, that passion for freedom.
Just stepping back a bit on this whole system, this whole idea of systems. One thing I've made a point of in talking with my friends and so on, because I have friends who are socialists, and maybe they've changed a little bit. But, I think the big point is that socialism doesn't actually get rid of the big businesses. It doesn't get rid of the factories. It doesn't get rid of any of those things. I mean, can we name a single communist or socialist country, no matter which stage of it they go to, that got rid of the big businesses and the factories? No, it takes, like you said, the ability to have those things, like me and you being able to start them,
the people
and puts it into
power.
a centralized power structure. And the people who are placed in charge of those by the government then become basically government officials with very similar roles to what they play now, but just with less accountability and really no recourse for people who work under them.
Yeah, I mean, we all become employees of the state. The only employer is the state. And that quickly turns into some slave-like concepts where you are forced to show up. And what I always find this disturbing, the HR offices in Venezuela, they don't monitor sexual harassment in the workplace or anything like that. Like, they don't take paperwork for any relationships going on in the workplace. Instead, they're like, do you have a picture of Che Guevara in your office, and why not? Were you at the protest last weekend in favor of the socialist regime or not? Why weren't you there? Why weren't you wearing red? It is creepy stuff. But what I also find interesting, there's a lot of young people that will say, well, when you look at Venezuela, they are still capitalists. They have private businesses there. And I'm like, okay, I understand that's a very naive concept, so let me just explain something to you. They take control, and they put their friends from the regime in charge of these private companies. We need to have a better perception of what government is and stop falling for it all the time. We need to stop understanding and trusting that they're going to have our best interest at heart. We have to be more protective of ourselves and our families. And that also plays into the fact that the last 2 generations of Americans just willingly sent our kids to public school and never even considered another option, never even thought that the government would have ill intentions with our children. And I think we need to start changing that and understanding we're sending our kids to government school, and maybe we should pay a little bit more attention instead of just sending them off on the bus every morning.
Well, folks, 2 months on now, and we are still totally demonetized by YouTube. But given the situation where we have to censor ourselves if we want to really stay on this platform and make it work, we've decided on something else, which is this. We've launched a new platform called Epoch TV, EPOCHTV.com. And through this, we're able to publish uncensored content. News that can criticize anything we'd like, news that can talk about anything we'd like, news that can give you real information from any part of the world about any topic without having to worry whether individuals will censor it. And in this current environment where information is being controlled, where narratives are being controlled, and where anyone who steps outside the boundaries of what is the accepted narrative by the fact checkers, quote unquote, by different big tech organizations, by media organizations, and so on. This is something that we believe is needed for the modern political environment, where people should be able to call things out. People should be able to question things. This is the basis of the Fourth Estate in America. The belief, again, that media should be able to hold government power in check, and that media should be able to inform the public about the issues they should be informed about, because that is the basis of our election system. An informed public making informed decisions. If you control this system of information, you control the political system. And folks, being a media organization, we can't stand for that. And so again, we have created an uncensored platform, Epoch TV. And anyone who wants to support Crossroads or support our broader mission of bringing real news, uncensored news, that's not afraid to stand up for what matters, please check out our website, epochtv.com, EPOCHTV.com. Check out the link below, and folks, please support us there.